Hi guys, in this video I will tell you about Star Wars 8 and 9 and also Star Wars 10, 11 and the last Star Wars movie episode 12 in 2027. Yes, you have heard right. I will be talking about the last Star Wars trilogy starting in 2023. Many of you already know that there will be a Star Wars 8, and there is no question that there will be a sequel. Disney has not only planned Star Wars Episode 8, but the movie is also in the filming process. After all, Star Wars 7 is just the beginning of another trilogy, ending in 2019 with Star Wars Episode 9. The screenplay of Star Wars Episode 8 could be one of the most top-kept secrets in the movie business today, as the director Rian Johnson, who will be directing Star Wars 8, and George Lucas have already written and finished that screenplay. And because Star Wars 8 is already filming, there's even a footage of Star Wars 8, but it won't be released until Star Wars 7 is still in the cinemas. The question of whether the cast of Star Wars 7 will be the same as in Star Wars 8 has also been answered and confirmed. Daisy Ridley as Rey, John Boyega as Finn, Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker, and Harrison Ford as Han Solo will not just be returning in Star Wars 8, they are already in the set right now. However, J.J. Abrams is not out of the game. He is now the executive producer of Star Wars 8. All in all, Star Wars 8 has been already planned to hit the cinemas in 2017. Well, speaking of Star Wars 8, what about Star Wars 9? While the cast has not been revealed yet, it is already confirmed that Jurassic World director Colin Trevorrow will be directing Star Wars 9, and again Rian Johnson, director of Star Wars 8, and George Lucas have already written the screenplay. Star Wars 9 has been scheduled for 2019. So while Star Wars 9 has been scheduled and set, could we even start to think about Star Wars 10? Yes, we can. Before talking about Star Wars 10, there are some interesting facts we should know. The only reason why Star Wars 10 would not be produced would be that this trilogy of Star Wars 7, 8 and 9 would fail. For the trilogy of Star Wars to fail, we would have to assume that Episode 7, 8 and 9 would be a total box office disaster, which is very unlikely from today's view of point. Disney bought Lucasfilm for the amount of $4 billion. You don't invest such an amount just to do a couple of movies and then exit. Besides, there has been no rumors or any announcement that Disney is planning an exit strategy for Star Wars. The astute strategy Disney has shown over the last years definitely suggests that they will continue to produce Star Wars movies as long as they can to make more profit. Star Wars 10 is just a step away from Star Wars 9, which has been scheduled already, so it's really not in a galaxy far, far away. However, it won't be right after Star Wars 9. History of Star Wars movie making has shown that after a trilogy ends, there is a much more longer waiting period between each trilogy than between the sequels. So we are actually talking about the next and fourth trilogy, which would be Star Wars 10, 11 and 12 altogether. In order to know when Star Wars 10 will be released, we have to have a look in the past to see the future, and the past will prove us right when and how Star Wars 10 to 12 will be released. The first trilogy started in 1977 and ended in 1983. Approximately 3.5 years passed between each movie. Then it took Lucasfilm 16 years to create the second trilogy. Of course, being that the first trilogy Lucasfilm has created, they did not have any experience on past trilogies. So it is understandable why it took Lucasfilm 16 years before coming up with a long-lasting strategy of trilogies. And the years of planning proved well-founded. That concept and the lessons learned were later passed on to Disney, another company with a history of strategically creating sequels and branding movie products. Being the second trilogy a huge success, Lucasfilm then produced it only 10 years later instead of 16. The reason for this can economically be explained, especially when it comes to movie sequels like this. An early continuation can lead to a market saturation. The last thing the company wants is to overwhelm the audience and the fans with Star Wars movies so often that eventually they will start to reject it. In order to keep the value of each trilogy and the audience excited, the company has to wait a certain amount of time, just the right time to make sure the fans are impatient enough, but not too late so Star Wars won't be forgotten or loses its touch, because other trends would gain interest. However, after 2019, considering the fast change of interest due to internet and fast-spreading media, the movie sequel cycles are also getting shorter and shorter. It is unlikely that after Star Wars 9, Disney would risk waiting another 10 years this time. In a world of video on demand, and the changing culture of watching movies and films, such as from independent producers, the audience has changed and expects to be entertained faster, longer, and more intense. Disney would also have to consider that after the third trilogy, the saturation of Star Wars product could eventually kick in, as this happens to all products. In order to do that, Disney would not just have to come up with a whole different concept of Star Wars after 2019, but also has to come with it faster than ever before. That's why the next Star Wars trilogy, starting with Episode 10, most likely will be in 2023, only 4 years after the last one. And one can also assume that this would be the last one, because you would not expect the mass to be a Star Wars fans for another 20 years. And let's not forget that in 2027, this will not just be the end of Star Wars, but also the 50th anniversary. Disney most likely be using that either to create something wonderful or something very disappointing, because after all, it will be the last one, so who'd care to create something that would cost too much when there's no sequel planned anymore? After all, it's all just business. So, what do you think?